Do that now then. Okay, so I'm going to mute you all now, councillors, and when you hear me say good morning, you'll know that we're live. Okay. Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning all, and welcome to the meeting of Adults and Community Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee. I'd also like to welcome the members of the public who are listening to the audio feed via the County Council's website. I'd like to confirm the members of the committee who are present. Trina, would you like to ask away?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Please, could I ask you to confirm your presence when your name is called? Councillor Hugo Marfleet.
Present.
Councillor Elizabeth Sneath.
Present.
Councillor Bob Adams. Councillor Mrs. Paula Cooper. Councillor Robert Fuchs.
Present.
Councillor Rob Kendrick.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Julie Killey. Councillor Killey,
turn your mic on.
Can you turn your mic on, please?
Julie, your microphone.
She's saying present on the screen.
Yeah.
I think she's having problems. Yeah, you there? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Christine Lawton.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Marianne Overton.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Reeve.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Mark Whittington. He's absent. Okay, Chairman.
Thank you. I think I can't remember now, but I'm wondering whether Mark's put his apologies in. I had a feeling he was away, unless that was another meeting, but I had a feeling he might be away and put his apologies in.
He has, Chairman. He has.
That's fine. So, okay, thank you for that. And I'd like to welcome Councillor Patricia Bradwell, the Executive Councillor for Adult Care and Health and Children's Services here today, and Justin Hackney, Assistant Director for Specialist Services. I suspect there might be a few others that come in on various points throughout the agenda items as we go. I also believe that we have Derek Ward coming to give us an update on COVID, and that Derek is a bit time tight, so when Derek comes, when we finish an item agenda, we'll perhaps pull him forward so that he can come in and do the bit and then go rather than miss him. So, okay. Apologies then, please, Katrina, as I've jumped the gun.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Whittington, as you said earlier, Chairman.
Right. Brilliant. Thank you. Declarations of members' interest. If any members have any interests that come along then throughout the meeting, then please let us know. So I'll take us now to minutes of the 21st of October 2020. To confirm the minutes of the meeting as a correct record, can I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
Hang on, Hugo, it's Rob here,
Yeah.
Councillor Fowkes. I did send in apologies. I was on jury service, but I'm not listed as having sent them in.
Okay, we'll have that noted.
Thanks.
Was that fun?
Oh yeah, it was good actually. We had 3 cases: attempted murder, axe killing. It was awful.
Right. Well, you've done your bit.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so back to the minutes. Do we feel that they're correct record?
You need a seconder, Chairman.
Have I got a proposer?
Hendrick.
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you, Rob and Julie. And okay, announcements. Patricia, have you got anything that you'd like to say?
Well, I had about testing.
Excuse me, Chairman. Sorry to interrupt, but can we
Sorry.
vote on those, please? Because they are the minutes.
Sorry, yeah. All those in favour of the minutes? Well, I don't think we can all see. So basically, is anybody against? Anybody abstain? I take it we're all in favour. So carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to item 4 then, announcements. Sorry about that.
No, it's quite all right. I was just going to update the committee on how all the staff have moved back into working in sort of more lockdown situation. I think actually this time around staff are it is much easier than when we became locked down in March, but all services that are running, and I've particularly asked for is to ensure that we keep on top of OT work, because when we were first locked down, we did when we came out had a bit of a backlog, and obviously that's a key area for us in adult care, because obviously we know people coming out of hospital, or if you've had a fall in the home, adaptations actually, really help you to recover. So, the OT service now, they'll be going in with PPE, and we're going to make sure that that service does do all it can. I know sometimes that's very difficult, and actually, our residents will say they don't want anybody coming in their home, especially if they're self-isolating, but it is a key part of the adult care world. The only other thing is, I know Derek's coming to brief you on COVID, but I was very pleased to hear this week that our home care workers will be tested as like the same as residential care workers. I was quite worried when, the government said all people in the staff in residential homes should be tested, which was great, but I did feel our home care workers were equally at risk with going into different homes. So I'm pleased that will start to be rolled out immediately. But everything else, what I was going to say, I'll leave to Derek, because there has been quite a few changes, and I think he'll update members on that. So that's all really. But I think it's really good news that we're a huge county. We're delivering services to thousands of people every week, and it's really good that those services continue at the same level and standard as they do in normal times.
Excellent. Yeah. It's good news for that. The only other news I've got is that in the last week we implemented Rule 17, which was commissioning of a designated COVID-19 care home beds to help with discharge from the hospital. And we did a procurement exercise to sort of go out and see. We didn't really find a solution, but then the solution came by taking a care home and making it sort of designated so that we could in effect get people out of hospital. They all have to be checked and tested, etc. But it just sort of allows a recovery in a care home rather than blocking hospital beds. And believe that that's now been passed with the leader, and you've all had notification. But we did call round, and Councillor Bradwell, Councillor Martin Hill, and also I spoke to Councillor Rob Parker about it, and everybody was all happy that everything was done, and it was a special situation as we needed to act quickly under an emergency situation. So
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I forgot about that. That was last week, not this week.
Yeah.
Things just roll on. But yeah, we will have 60 beds. We have got there's 3 homes, and we will eventually have 60 beds. But obviously, we've just got to enact all that. You're quite right. But we have been clear with our NHS colleagues that we won't take anybody unless they've had a COVID test. And that was the problem last time, that, you know, some of these people probably have got a bed in a residential home. But what we said is those patients cannot go back to the residential home if they had a placement there. They cannot go back till they're testing negative, because it's quite, you know, we just do not want the same situation where, you know, COVID people were coming out of hospital and going back into a residential home. It's not fair. So we have been quite firm with them. So at the moment, you know, that is what's happening, because we don't want to have the same problems that we had last time. I think people need to be safe in residential homes as much as they can be.
Excellent. No, I think it was that was a you know, good proactive, reactive piece of work as well, and actually the best outcome came out in the end. So that's good. Okay, we'll go into the in-house day services. I believe we've got Justin Hackney here, Assistant Director and Specialist Services, and John Waters, Day Opportunities Manager. And I've also got, actually, just before we go, I see Marianne, you want to just come in? Microphone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a slow response on the button. I just want to say a very big thank you. It's been a very tough time. We thought this was all going to be quick. You know, we all thought we'd be over in a couple of months. And our staff have, and thank you also to our councillors, have continued to beaver away throughout. So I did check yesterday, and none of our staff have been furloughed. So while others might have had that, you know, in a way it's a break, for our staff, they have continued to beaver away throughout this whole period. So just a really big thank you to all councillors and staff for keeping the ship going, that's providing such vital services to our residents. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you for that. So, okay, so we'll move on then to the in-house day services. So, welcome to John and Justin.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to do a very brief introduction, and then I'll have the pleasure of introducing John to yourselves. Ask John to give you a little bit of background about himself, and then we've got a presentation for you as well. So the main purpose of the report today really is to give an update to the Scrutiny Committee on the work of the day services, and in particular we've attached a first draft plan, which is really a plan for the continuous improvement of our day services. I know the committee have been very interested in day services, and therefore we wanted to take the opportunity to bring an early draft of this report, really, so that the committee could have some input on it in terms of feedback. We didn't want to bring a report that was almost complete, really, for approval as such. It was more that early engagement and to get your feedback, which is very important. We also want to take the opportunity of sort of showcasing some of the great work that the day service has been doing during the COVID lockdown period, really. And I would echo my thanks to all of the staff and John in terms of the in-house day services, in terms of what they've done to continue to provide support to people during the COVID period. So without further delay, really, John, would you like to just introduce yourself, and then we can move on to the presentation, and then we can allow some time for sort of questions and feedback at the end. Just one final point as well is that hopefully, technology allowing, we have got a short video clip that we would like to share with you that demonstrates some of the work that's been taken forward during lockdown as well. Okay, I'll pause there.
Okay, thank you, Justin, and thank everybody for the opportunity to come and share with you the work we've been taking forward over the past year since I've returned to Lincolnshire County Council, as Justin invited me to do. Just very quickly to introduce myself. So I manage the day opportunity services in the county. Some 15 years or so ago, I left the employment of the county council, having worked in social services for a number of years, and went off and did a number of things that involved taking forward the social care agenda. Was involved in doing an awful lot of work, and it took me all over the world, in fact, in terms of seeing what was happening and understanding how well we can support people to live great lives. And then reached a point where I had the opportunity to come back and work locally in the county that I've lived in for the past 20 years or so. And hopefully today is an opportunity just to share with you where I think we're at and some of the things we've managed to achieve over this crazy year, and where we're looking to progress.
Well, welcome, John, and good to see you. And it's just a shame I didn't get to do the great tour of all the care homes with some of the committee members. It was all planned, but just happened to be right at the end of March when COVID went into full lockdown. So
yeah. Well, hopefully we'll have a little flavour of some of those things we've managed to keep doing, Councillor Marfleet. And as soon as COVID restrictions allow, I'd love the opportunity to meet face to face with members and share with them some of the great work our staff are doing.
Yeah.
So in terms of the presentation, Katrina, I don't know what the protocols are. Will that be shared on screen, or will members just reflect to the papers? Is it possible to share that presentation on screen?
As far as I'm aware, I think Simon's got that in hand. He will be sorting it for you in a moment.
Ah, wonderful.
Yes, I've got the video clip all lined up, ready to go. And then I thought the order was the video clip, then the PowerPoint presentation, which is also ready, but I'll be handling those. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Yep, so when you're ready, if you want to play that then, and we'll resume after that.
Very good.
Thank you, Simon. Simon, is it possible to bring up the slides? And just to say there, really, the key message of that short slide set there, that short video, really was something that we've been thinking about very, very hard across the service over the past year or so, and that's about the things that people have to give. We've got two main roles in our service. One is to keep families together. So families work tirelessly caring for their loved ones from the moment they're born through beyond adulthood and into middle age often now. And we keep families together by the respite that we offer. But the other aspect is that with the people that attend the services that we provide is really about supporting them to lead great lives. And we've been working very hard over the past year to help people find those opportunities to connect and to give, be active parts of their local communities and engaged in tidying up the local woodland, sharing the apples. And one of the responses we had from one of the people that came home and found that little message from us was that they'd lost their job that day, and what a difference it made to them. And for the people that we support to be able to give is so powerful. So one of the things that we're trying to do is find opportunities to connect to their local communities and not just to be passive recipients of care and to be occupied away from the family home, but really to find what a fulfilling life is for them. So if I can just bring the slides up, Simon, is that possible? Simon, I don't know if we can bring the slides up, can we?
He's probably just working on it now, John. Just give him a moment.
Okay.
Well, that was a very moving video anyway, and it was very well done. So congratulations to all involved on that.
Thank you. I mean, it has been a very challenging year. It has been a very challenging year because of the COVID restrictions, but the staff in the service have responded amazingly, and we've had to adapt, but we have adapted, and according with the restrictions that have been in place, they fluctuated over time, but we've been out and about and connecting. One of the big things that we've done during that period, and one of the big decisions that we took early on, was we recognised we needed to keep in touch with people. We recognised that we needed to maintain that link. So we prioritised making sure that we would ring families every week, and we'd speak to them and check out how they were doing and where we needed to put in support for them. And every time I've had occasion to speak to families over the past few months during the pandemic, each of them have said how important that contact was to them, and that really, even if all it did was make sure they knew that somebody was thinking about them and somebody was there for them. So one of the things that we did during the tighter periods of lockdown has been to maintain that contact with people, and it meant that we could do the simple things, collecting prescriptions for people, making sure that they had what they needed, and the staff have been very, very flexible in doing that for us. So I do want to place on record my recognition of that and my thanks to them for that.
No, and I think that's very good. And I think actually it's the sort of video that inspires others to sort of come and support, voluntary and all of that. So, well worth it. Looks like Simon's come up trump.
Yeah. Slides are there, Chairman.
Okay, so Simon, in terms of the technicality of moving these forwards, if I try and take control, I think I might be able to. So I'll go very quickly through. These are just some images of what's been going on across the service over the past year. And those ideas there of supporting people to connect and to contribute are so powerful and important. And the sense of well-being that creates from allowing people to give is so important to us, and being active parts of the local community. On top of that, we have been doing a lot of work to think very, very hard about how we support people, how we plan with people, not on what's wrong with them or on their disability, but on what they want to achieve in life, what their passions are, what their gifts are. And we've been working very hard as a staff team, or staff teams across the county, thinking about our approaches to planning and supporting with people. And it has been a little bit of a challenge, you know, and I have had to say to people, listen, come on, let's have a good hard think about this, but they are responding. One of the great things that we've done, we've thought very hard about how we support people with profound and complex needs, who maybe don't use words to speak, and exploring the very fundamentals of communication and music. And we connected to Bishop Gott University, and we brought families in to work alongside us to learn and train together. And there's a little picture there of us doing that at Ancaster. One of the other big things that we've done, our buildings have, over the past few years, shown the signs of wear and tear. And if we're to achieve one of the things that we want to achieve, which is to have buildings that we can share with our local community, the first thing we need to do is to make them really places we're proud of. So we've invested a little bit of money, but a lot of effort in terms of getting the buildings a little bit brighter and a little bit better in terms of internal redecoration. And we've been involving the people we support as part of that process, and getting some real sense of pride and ownership in the centres that they're part of. One of the other things we've been doing is looking hard at moving just from activity to opportunity. And what I mean by that is whilst people are with us and support we're providing, we're really trying to increase the quality of the opportunities that we provide. And there's some pictures there of a session in Market Raisin where we were making bread, and everybody was heavily involved. At the end of it, they could enjoy the benefits of their work and also take them home and share them with their families, which was lovely. Here's a picture of us over in Louth. There's a theatre group who are active in the local theatre there, and they did a presentation just prior to lockdown. They did a theatre production, and it brought people together, and it brought families together, but it also showed what the people we support can do if they apply themselves. And here's another picture of some people, one in Sleaford, one over in Gainsborough, but just engaged over lockdown, keeping the plants and everything going, and socially distanced and outside, but really focused on producing something worth having at the end of the day. This idea of connection and contribution, we've been reaching out and forming connections and relationships with local community groups and local town councils. And here's a little example. There was a community clear-up day in Horncastle, and we went along and we joined the other local volunteers, and we went about town just having a tidy up, really. And as you can see, one of the comments from one of the mums of somebody in Boston there, saying that my son goes to Scott House, which is in Boston. And she said, my son would have loved to have done that. And so we opened up similar opportunities in Boston. So one of the things we've been doing is working hard at our relationships with families, and working out how do we communicate better, how do we share what we're doing better. We've been using social media a fair amount to do that. One of the other projects, and again, this was just prior to lockdown, I've been working hard to make connections across the county council, and reached out to the countryside access team, and we got involved in planting basically we gave birth to a wood just outside Lincoln on an old landfill site, and everybody came along, and it was beautiful to see really how people from the service, but also local people came together. And it took us a little while to work out, what's our job here? How do we do it? But people learned and people gave, and we planted a little word that's now got over the next 5, 10, 15 years will grow and become a nature reserve. And it was a great day, really. Here's another little example of some of the things that people have been doing. On the left there, you'll see some flowers growing outside one of the centres. And what we did there was we just gathered them together, and we went round and we just gave them to local people. We left them on doorsteps and we gave them into people in shops, and we started to make connections and friendships. And from that, from those interactions, we have people coming and connecting back with us. So just that sense of community building, and finding ways of people to give is central to who and what we are. And you can see the little note there from somebody when we did the apples and the apple pies that people made as a result of it. So really the story of our journey so far, this last year or so since I've been back working with everybody, it's been a really challenging year. We've got a long way to go. We do have a lot of challenges. We do need to improve the quality across the board. There are areas where we're not as good as we should be, and I'll make no bones about that. I have massively higher aspirations for people and the lives that people are able to live if only we support them well, and we don't always do that as best we can. But we are making significant progress, and I think a year in, I think I'm proud of what the staff have achieved and what we're working towards, and I do need to note that. And in terms of the report that you've got, we're welcoming feedback. Justin, I've just seen you put your hand up there. Sorry, I was looking at the slides and not at your little picture.
That's okay. Thank you very much, John, for sharing, some of the great work that's been going on in the day services. I would like to say to the committee that, John has been an absolute breath of fresh air in terms of his creativity and his vision in terms of our in-house day services, and was really critical in terms of actually the direction of travel we wanted to go with the services. The committee will remember we did rationalise our centres previously, and we've got 12 centres now. I'm not too sure actually whether the appendix came out with a pack, but we can circulate that in terms of where those 12 centres are, and there's a map of them. And
they didn't come out.
No, okay. We'll get that circulated, Chair. I saw in the questions as well, normally in non-COVID times, we have about somewhere in the region between 300 and 400 people who use our services. They're open 5 days a week, normally between sort of 8:30 to 5ish in the evenings, really. But as the plan says, really, one of the ambitions is to get greater community engagement, to use the buildings as assets, and that, we're open for those buildings as community assets to be used outside normal day services hours, really. So the key message really in the action plan is around, as John touched upon, high aspirations, and it's linked to a wider movement, if you like, across adult care of something called strength-based practice, where again we're looking at working from a strength and asset point of view rather than starting from a point of view of deficits. And I have to say the in-house day services are, showing the way really in terms of some of the creativity that we want to go across the rest of the services in adult care as well. So very much adult care in Lincolnshire are seen as good, but we're not satisfied to stay there. We want to move on. We want to go past outstanding, and as the strategy says, the idea is reach for the stars and to get them. So we won't go through the strategy document in detail, because I think the slides that John shared pretty much touched on the key points, and hopefully people have had the opportunity to read the document. So if we open it up now for any questions, and we'll do our best to feedback on those. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John and Justin. I've got Councillor Rob Folkes up first.
Thanks, Hugo. Thank you, John and Justin. It was a really good report, that, and I really enjoyed the film. And it's nice to see, you're taking such a proactive view to improving things for all our adults. I just got some feedback, and the first one is, of course, the County Council is a corporate parent, and so we have a responsibility for our looked after children and care leavers, and we're really lucky that we have Bernardos who facilitate the care leaving programme. So when it comes to Apprentice Opportunities, could you ensure that our looked after children and care leavers are encouraged and appraised of the opportunities that might exist that you've mentioned in your report? The second one is on transport. Is there any possibility that Call Connect could be utilised to improve our transport links? And finally, on the locations, yeah, they are missing. So it'd be nice to see those. But overall, extremely well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that feedback. I think that's an excellent idea in terms of making the join-ups across different parts of the council. I mean, John has also been doing some work in terms of community payback with citizens in terms of the day services, which is really good as well. But the idea of care leavers is a fantastic one, so we'll definitely join the dots on that one. In terms of the transport, we have been doing some work with Anita Ruffle and colleagues in Transport Services Group just to have a look at really how we can look to gain access in the community via transport links. Obviously, we get people transported to the day services and home where that's necessary, but we're more and more wanting to do things in the community. So Call Connect is one of the opportunities that we can look at in the future, but we're also exploring others as well. So at the moment, we will be sort of procuring bespoke solutions with Anita's support, but in the longer term we may actually be able to expand Call Connect if the business model fits right. So thank you.
No, I think the transport one is that there's a lot of benefits to getting the transport right, and I think we have Call Connect. I've always been a believer that nearly every centre could do with its own minibus because of the ruralness of the area and bringing people in. So, but it's good to see that there is a big focus on the transport, because I do think it's key for Lincolnshire. But I've got Marianne over to next, then Liz.
Thank you very much. That was a very exciting presentation, and that's just during COVID times. So that's quite astonishing. I would like to try to make sure that these things are embedded for the long term and for everyone. I'm just wondering what capacity there is for, are you able to take everybody who wants to come? Is transport the biggest barrier that prevents them taking part? And if you wouldn't mind saying something about how can we make sure this is rolled out and that it's secure in the future in a time of economic uncertainty that might be around the corner? Thank you.
Okay, Chair, if I take that, and then John, if you want to chip in as well with any thoughts of your own. So, I mean, the buildings we have got do have some operating capacity, but we do have space for more people to attend. I think really, though, what we want to see is the building base is only, part of the overall offer. And really what we want to be able to do is actually offer more activities in local communities and, look at those opportunities for employment and people sharing their the gifts that they have, really. So, the things like the tree planting, etc. So in terms of capacity, the community has got endless capacity. So, that's really, really positive. We do want to expand the offer that we have from our day services. Many of the services have in the past just focused on one sort of primary support reason. For a lot of the people who attend our day services have got learning disability, but we've got ambition to develop a dementia offer from each of the bases, really, and that will be both in terms of engaging with local networks, also with the clinical commissioning group and local organisations and charities as well. And just really, use again the buildings at weekends or in the evening for, sitting services, or for meeting and greeting, or just for people to have time to relax with, their friends. So we're building that up, and we want to work with Age Concern and other partners in terms of scoping out what that dementia offer looks like, and that'll be a good step forward in terms of having a wider offer available. One of the big initiatives that we have got planned is that we've always known we've needed to replace the Grantham Day service. Really, it's fairly limited in size, and it's, as John says, it's very tired. And really, in terms of our ambition of places to be proud of and that community engagement, we know that we need to replace that. There's been a search on for a replacement for a while now, but Property Services have found an opportunity that we're progressing a business case for, and we have actually got funding in the capital programme to support already, but we will need to go through due diligence processes and approval processes in terms of doing that. So, the previous rationalisation as well was very much about making the services more sustainable going forward. So, that's a really positive thing. I hope that covers the points that you've raised, Councillor Overton. John, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'd echo everything you said, Justin, but my sense of sustainability moving forwards, there's an awful lot that we can and must and will do differently that's about innovation and creativity, about reaching out and forming partnerships, about not just doing things in the way that we've always done them. Just for example, I'm starting an initiative, hopefully, with British Canoeing, and they've got funding coming in as a national sports body, and we can tap into the resources and opportunities that their local clubs have, and things like that mean that we just have to think a little bit outside of the box. So whilst I recognise that absolutely as a core, we do need to invest in our services and our buildings, but there's an awful lot of added value that we can bring to make achieve the ambitions that we have. The community payback initiative that Justin talked about that we set off was all about making those good links, and the young lads that have come in and been involved in that. One of them said to me, "Here, mister, how do I get a job here?" So it opened up, his aspirations, but it also meant that we got a lovely lick of paint and a refresh in the garden and stuff like that for pence, for the money of the paint. So if we can be creative and we can be innovative, so there's a bit of a cultural shift in the service that we need to partly raise our aspirations and then follow through. And we're starting to do that more and more. So, watch this space, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Marianne, do you have a supplement?
Thank you very much. That was really helpful. Just a little caution on the community has endless capacity. I'd worry a little about that because, clearly the community does have huge capacity and they are doing a great deal. But without some foundation, I think, of paid support and really making things run, it's very difficult to make things sustainable in the long term, I think.
Absolutely.
So I can see you nodding on that one.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important about the sustainability. And I think, I was involved before when we did see those homes had to close. And I'm only wondering whether we are catering for the numbers of people that we used to cater for. And I know obviously the pictures are difficult because it's COVID and you can't have more than 6 presumably outside together. But if we're really going to give support for all of the older, all of the people who would like it or are in need, that is a very big task. Thank you.
Okay. Right, I've got Liz.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody. Oh, that was wonderful. I love that apple story. That was really special and really moving. I think connecting everybody with nature is just absolutely vital, particularly at this time, but going forward, I'm sure it will be. I was thinking about transport. Do we use volunteer teams to bring in people to these services? Because I know Age UK do, and that works quite well. But I have a worry about it all is cost. This surely is going to be very costly, both of time and money. And I'm not saying that makes it wrong, but it is surely a costly exercise to do something as superbly as this is being done, and is going to be done even more so in the future. And my last question, a little bit trite really, where did the Wong come from? I was trying to think of what it stood for. I can't think of anything particular at the moment. That was all.
Basically, it's the old cattle market and sheep market, and it sits with, in fact, they're still there, these sheep bits. So I think it was just the old centre of the market town from a prospect of trading, and the Wong sits right up. Well, the Wong's the sort of cattle market, and it sits right opposite it.
Right. Okay.
So it's more a historic name.
Okay.
Thanks. My take on it.
Thank you. Hugo.
But it's nice. It's a nice place, though. Okay.
Sorry?
I say it's a nice
good
centre. So
good.
Okay. Rob?
I mean, in response to the volunteering question, I mean, again, we are looking at the transport arrangements. It's a very difficult time at the moment in terms of sensitivities of the transport market, and the corporate leadership team were a little bit nervous around us being too creative at the moment in terms of, in case it had knock-on effects in terms of school transport arrangements, etc. But with the virus with the vaccines in sight now, we're looking ahead positively, so that we can actually look at in terms of the longer term sustainability of our transport arrangements and how that'll work. And volunteer drivers will be something that we can explore as part of that as well. In terms of the cost question, I think what's really, really important is to understand that actually day services, as well as being a services in their own right, are a fantastic preventative intervention, really, and you like, in terms of promoting independence for people. Without such services like our in-house day services, then there would be more pressures on families, more pressures on individuals, and the likelihood is that there would be a higher risk of admission to residential care or other more supported services, really. So in a way, investing in our day services makes financial sense, as well as it does in terms of a moral sense, and it's the right thing to do. So we very much see that as a finance well invested in the future.
And Justin, if I could just add, in terms of the couple of questions there from Councillor Overton and Councillor Smith in terms of the funding, you're absolutely right. There is a need for ongoing sustained investment and a core service, and because you provide that social infrastructure that keeps families together, and that is as Justin says, money very well spent. But the added value, it doesn't cost anything to go out and make those connections. What it takes it doesn't cost anything to be kind or caring or thoughtful or creative. And that's kind of my job, is to make sure that the money that's there goes as far as it can and has maximum impact. And we're starting to do that better than perhaps we could if we weren't so creative. So we're trying really hard to be adaptive and creative.
That's it. Thanks, John. We do that. We manage the money very well, but equally, you know, if there's a need to invest additional money in the transport to achieve the objectives we need to, then we will look at that in terms of the right process, in terms of taking that through our directorate leadership teams and the budget planning processes as well. So, you know, that's the right way to do it.
Thanks. That's great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. I've got Rob next.
So thank you, Chairman. Just picking up on the theme of community engagement, I speak from having been involved in the mental health field and having volunteers engaged from the local community in a number of day projects that we had in LPFT. I was just wondering whether you have any engagement with the local community through a volunteer scheme in any way, which I found very beneficial both for the volunteers in giving them an understanding, but also beneficial to the service users. So I was just wondering if you have any community engagement in that sort of way.
We have a number of volunteers who've historically worked with us across the service, and we very much benefit from them and recognise the contribution that they make. One of the points in the development plan is clearly we need to grow and invest in that. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that as we're doing that, then what really helps is identifying with each individual their personal contribution and having a role for that person and valuing that. So that will be at the heart as we move forward, and we reach out and we seek those help and assistance from those volunteers, that we really make sure we get it right for each person. So as well as the service thinking about individuals, when we're reaching out to volunteers, to have that as well. And we have had a small increase in the number of volunteers even during the COVID time. So we're absolutely onto it.
And I'd just add the volunteering is adding value, is not a replacement for our core support services, etc. So, and it's adding value to the community as well. So, we want the volunteers to feel that they're getting something back from what they're doing. For example, it might be people haven't got a garden, but they might want to have access to some of the grounds to help grow things in the grounds, and then they get something that benefits them. And actually, working with people who attend our services as well, there's some friendships and positive things that can come out of that as well. So volunteering is very much value adding.
The other aspect of that, Justin, obviously, is the support that we give people to volunteer. So there's in Gainsborough, the service up there, they've reached out to the local Cinnamon Trust, which is a local charity that provides pet care for people who aren't able to care for their pets anymore because of ill health or whatever reason. And people are beginning to volunteer themselves. So we're supporting people to volunteer. So there's both aspects to that. Is the people that we support, given the right help, can volunteer, as well as benefiting from the role of volunteers.
That's very good. I mean, the key issue is getting the recruitment right, so you fit round pegs into round holes, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. No, I mean, all in all, it is a very good direction of travel, and it's very welcome. I've been sort of following it from the start when we had over 30 different daycare centres and the transformation, but it was also buildings fit for purpose and all the other bits, and sort of, it's very good. I think the key bullet points on page 21 sum it up very well. Support for micro enterprises and employment opportunity, perhaps. There is grant funding from DWP that can help and support some of those mechanisms. One of the sort of areas of which to look at, when you sort of roll back, in effect, we perhaps need to roll back. Well, I'll go 10 years because it'll definitely put me back. when we sort of talked about learning disabilities, we basically had like a 3-tier system: moderates, complex, and I can't remember what the other one was now. And that was in the sort of days where councils had more discretionary at funding the different levels of needs, and where we sort of then the government moved us into a sort of more the critical and complex needs. And of course, in the old days, those with moderate needs did use the daycare centres. Do we sort of welcome these back? And also, and I'm also quite happy that in effect there is always a charging element, because we can't always fund everything for free, and sometimes people are in a good situation financially that can contribute. And one of the things that we always had was sort of contributing as a sort of like a day rate for daycare centres. But I wonder if we sort of do the sort of moderates come back? Can they come back? Is that the sort of game plan to sort of get more people using? The more people, the more interaction, the more I think it supports.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, that is the plan. I mean, in terms of the extended offer, so it may extend to people on, the edge of care rather than necessarily those that are eligible to care. So it is an expanded use. Obviously, there might need to be some prioritisation of capacity if we reach those limits, but we're not there at the moment. And as we talked about, there's opportunities in other venues, etc. as well. So yes, the extended offer, if you like, in terms of that community engagement, yes, we actively want to encourage that. In terms of self-funders, again, if there's capacity there, we'll find a way for people to attend if they want to, and we can work out a rate to do that. I think, John, you've done something very recently, haven't you, for a gentleman who lived across the borders slightly, but wanted to access the centres, and it made sense. So yes, we're doing that.
And actually, I'll just correct myself in some sense, and what you just said on that is that the charging is because actually those that in some sense it's not about a privilege system either, because those that obviously aren't in a situation for paying for it can actually access them through other means like personal budget, etc., and the personalisation agenda. So it is a sort of two-pronged attack. It's just that not everything should be always just free.
Absolutely. That preventative extension of the offer, if you like, is really an important element of this, because a little bit of support for people who aren't yet eligible may actually mean that those people don't need to become eligible for social care. It's just, and it's part of that community engagement role, really. So, yeah, that's definitely part of the positive direction we want to go in terms of developing that preventative sort of extended offer around our services.
Yeah, brilliant. And the one other point really on transport, Bimbrook, for argument's sake, Bimbrook Village has a community minibus, which is absolutely geared up for all types of access. And there is, and in some sense, there is an element that they need support and use as much to sort of keep their sort of funding. So I think sometimes maybe I don't even know if we know where all the community minibuses are around Lincolnshire, but it is another sort of potential supporting transport mechanism that sort of sits in our communities that often goes a bit unsung. And I think the final bit to me, which comes out in this whole sort of everything that we've spoken about, and the key thing really is understanding their strengths is the sort of the key purpose. They have the ability to do so much and contribute, and I think with what you're doing in the community, it's in effect it's being bold to have a go that actually generates the joys and commitments. So no, brilliant. I think very good job. Just wonder if our old friend that used to come and join us at Adult Scrutiny all these times that took a huge interest in this, I hope he's hearing it today on the...
Oh, Mr. Chairman, can I tell you, David rang me yesterday.
David, that's it, yeah.
He rang me, he's read the papers, and he is really pleased what we're doing with the day services. So I don't know whether John knows David, but definitely Justin did. But he rang me to tell me he's really pleased and can't wait till he can come to a meeting and sit and listen to what we're doing. I thought that was amazing.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. That's very good. So I hope all is well with you, David. I suspect he's listening. So, but brilliant. Okay. Well,
thank you. Okay, can I'll take my leave of you all and just thank you for the opportunity to meet you all virtually and share with you what we've been up to.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. Thank you, and thank you for all your work. And we're all in favour, unless anybody would like to say that they are not or have anything else to say on the matter. Okay, well, thank you for that. Good news story. So, okay, we'll go on to items. Well, actually, is Derek in? Derek arrived yet? Do we know?
Not yet, Chairman.
Not yet. Okay, so we'll go on to item 6 then, transforming care. So, Justin.
Thank you, Chairman. So hopefully the committee have had the opportunity to read the report. I won't go through it verbatim. I mean, transforming care emerged out of what was the Winterbourne View scandal back in December 2012, and then the Winterbourne Review, which was around abuse and neglect of people with learning disabilities and challenging behaviour in a private hospital. And as part of the Winterbourne Review, basically that identified that there were people who were spending time in private hospitals and NHS hospitals that had been there for a very long time, but some of them didn't really need to be there for clinical reasons, and therefore there was very much a big national push with a transforming care agenda to actually minimise the number of people who were in related inpatient provision and to reduce the numbers. And following that, there was the Transforming Care national initiative. Each area had to develop transforming care partnerships, which Lincolnshire did as well. These were led by clinical commissioning groups, but also included wider partners, including the NHS England, regional partners, local authority, experts by experience, and LPFT as well in Lincolnshire. National targets were set at that time and have incrementally become more challenging through the NHS plan. In terms of Lincolnshire, we did very, very well with the agenda in its early days in terms of target numbers, certainly in terms of the original cohort of people who were in the majority in Longley's Court. Our local programme was very much fast-tracked, if you like, by the closure of Longley's Court by the CCGs and LPFT back in sort of round about 2015, before Transforming Care Partnerships came into being. But a lot of the funding that was originally invested in Longley's was invested in alternative services in the community, specialist learning disability services of a clinical nature provided by LPFT and commissioned by the clinical commissioning groups. And the aims of those teams really were to support admission avoidance in the community and also to provide community treatment. So again, with those services and that investment, we did well in Lincolnshire in terms of achieving the targets. I think as the as the program's progressed, what we have got to now is a cohort of adults with very, very complex needs, or either in secure accommodation commissioned by SpecCom, specialised commissioning, that is NHS England, and also a cohort of adults with complex needs who are in CCG commissioned beds. All of those, majority of those are out of county, apart from some people who are in mainstream mental health beds in Lincolnshire provided by LPFT. The last report that we received from the CCG and the Transforming Care Partnership identified 37 people in mental health related beds, including specialised beds for people with learning disabilities, and that the national target is for Lincolnshire that equates to having around about 21 people at any one time in terms of adults and 2 children. So we are over target in terms of what we should achieve in comparison to those national targets. However, you know, in terms of looking at the needs of those people, they are still unwell and they need to be in hospital to get the treatment that they need. There aren't any people that are in hospital inappropriately. A number of those adults also have been in care for over 5 years, and a number of those also are on Ministry of Justice sections. So they have a history of offending as part of their needs, in terms of the complexity of their needs to consider. Therefore, it's absolutely critical that you know, the right support is in place post-discharge for those people, and that, you know, the proper discharge planning processes are taken. So very much the partnership isn't hostage to a target. It will accept the challenge from NHS England, but it won't accept unsafe discharges, and it obviously needs to focus on treating people so that they get well in terms of before those discharges take place. I mean, one of the things that we are looking at is, just to give it a bit of background, there are fairly joined up commissioning arrangements around learning disability. The local authority leads on the commissioning of support for people who need social care or continuing health care when they're in the community, and that those joint commissioning arrangements have worked very well. The responsibility for commissioning care when people go into hospital transfers to the CCGs and NHS England, and they actually are responsible for the care of people while they're in those hospital settings. One of the things that we are discussing with the CCGs currently is actually for these people who are still in hospital and need to be discharged with these very complex needs, is there an opportunity actually to think about meeting those needs in a different way going forward? And as the CCGs lead on commissioning mental health services and other clinical support services in the community, there is potentially an opportunity that we could revise some of the lead commissioning arrangements so that going forward they may lead on the commissioning of support for these people with very complex needs, whilst the local authority continues to commission for those with more adult social care related needs rather than clinical needs. I'll pause there and happy to take any questions from the committee.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that, Justin. I mean, this highlights the direction of travel for some time, and it's well and truly welcome. But I think, like you say, there is a point that we will never get down to zero, and nor should we ever get down to zero, for the fact that there are some people that need that special arrangements in place and looked after. So, you know, I think it's you know, we've come so far as a nation on this whole topic to having people that years ago were sort of put away in homes, and actually today they operate every day in our schools and our communities, and you know, and they're part of our sort of general everyday lives, and the transformation's been quite something. Just what's happening with Discovery House nowadays? Because that used to be the sort of I haven't been round it for years, but I presume it's still similar to what it was, is it? LPFTs.
I mean, yeah, Discovery. I mean, LPFT provide a number of different types of beds for people who are mentally ill, mentally unwell, and a number of those beds are locked. Other are sort of semi-secure, and others are sort of open beds where people are, able to go on day discharge, etc. But those beds are for people who are, either have been sectioned under the Mental Health Act or are being supported on a voluntary basis in terms of that. So Discovery House is part of LPFT's overall provision. I think in terms of the transforming care agenda, Councillor Marfley, it's very much been seen as adults with learning disability historically. I think one of the things around the agenda is that it also incorporates people with a diagnosis of autism, and therefore many of the admissions in Lincolnshire, and I mean we're only talking very small numbers of people overall, but they are predominantly people with autism rather than learning disabilities. So, with the reasonable adjustments that have been made, that's why a number of people with autism who become mentally ill are supported in mainstream mental health beds, and that they can receive the treatment that they need in those mental health inpatient beds, really. So Discovery House will play a part in the picture. It's a bit like a Venn diagram, if you like. There's learning disability, and then there's mental health agenda, and the transforming care sort of sits between those two circles. Yeah. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's good. So thank you for that. Right, I've got Councillor Rob Kendrick and then Councillor Marianne Overton.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was just interested in a bit about people with an MOJ section. I take it obviously that Francis Willis unit isn't used in that capacity, from what I can remember when I used to visit there regularly for work purposes. That didn't have people with learning difficulties. It was obviously people who've been through the criminal justice system but had mental health issues. So where are people looked after who have got the MOJ section, who obviously come under the LD category?
It's a mix in terms of the majority of people are actually out of county beds.
Yeah.
So, obviously we don't have any specialist learning disability beds in Lincolnshire anymore provided by LPFT, so they're out of area. But at a point where people can be stepped down from secure beds, then they may well then come into county in some of the LPFT beds.
I take it. Sorry.
Before then moving on to sort of discharge in the community.
I'm always a bit cautious when I hear the word out of county mentioned, because obviously the tremendous cost that takes place on out of county placement. But I take it decisions being taken. It's not feasible to have our inpatient beds in county for that category of patient.
So there is a wider agenda of being able to reduce our out of area provision for mental health related inpatient provision. I mean, the agenda is about actually reducing the bed numbers to as low as possible from an NHS perspective. So, actually replacing out-of-county beds for in-county beds probably isn't the strategic direction that NHS England want to go in. I think what they would look at is being able to develop more community-based services that can manage people with more complex needs safely in the community. That's where the national strategy is going, rather than opening more beds, really. It is a really good question, though, in terms of what ultimately is the balance of number of beds and type of beds that we need. The number of beds is when we look at 37 people overall, and we support somewhere in the region of, over 2,000 people through the Section 75, and probably in the region of, 15,000 people potentially with a learning disability in Lincolnshire. It's very difficult to get that optimum balance right, really, in terms of those. So I hope that answers your question.
It's certainly, appreciate that. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I've got Rob Folks. Actually, sorry, Marianne, I missed Rob off.
Thanks, Hugo. Thanks, Justin. Children's services do really well in liaising with district councils. So how are you getting along, getting them on board, as you mentioned it in your report?
Thank you. So one of the, in terms of, I've got a much wider strategic role in terms of working with the clinical commissioning groups and Lincolnshire Partnership NHS Foundation Trust in terms of our, integrated working arrangements, if you like. And one of the things that I've established very recently is a joint strategy group around sourcing accommodation for people with learning disabilities, mental health needs, and or autism. So that strategy group has, I chair that group. It's also got senior responsible officer representation from the CCG, who's Andy Ricks, and Sarah Connery, who's the acting chief exec of LPFT. And through that, we've established that group, and we're getting additional membership from the capital programme, the commercial team. And I'm meeting shortly with Councillor Wendy Bowkett, who chairs the Housing, Home and Care Delivery Group, and talking about representation from districts on that group as well. Sarah and I visited the Housing and Care Delivery Group very recently to talk about our strategy work and how we could join that work up with the work of that group and districts. So, we are joining it up, and we will have a strategy for the beginning of next financial year that will identify different levels of complexity and sourcing strategies for each of those different levels, which will include, some needs around rented accommodation in the community. So we'll be working very closely with districts on that point.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Justin. Well done. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you. Marianne?
Thank you very much. Actually, I was following on quite closely from Councillor Kendrick. I was concerned about where these people are. In the document, there's quite a lot of technical stuff, and it mentions about the closure of Longleys Court. But I think we've now got 37 people that fit this very high needs category, if I understand this correctly. And these are very high needs, according to, if I'm right in understanding this, Transforming Care in Lincolnshire, that heading about the services, that these people have learning disability and autism and these other severe conditions, severe depression, psychotic illness, and these other issues. So I think what you're saying is that we've got 37 that we have to fund from Lincolnshire one way or another. And I'm also concerned as to where these people are. Longley's closed, and that's considered by your report to be a good thing. But I can't see from the document where the improvement is. Does it cost less? Are they getting a better service? Where is the improvement? And where is it? And you said it's going towards connection with the community, but that would imply that you want them locally in the communities where they belong, where their families and their friends are. So that wouldn't be any point in sending them off to Nottinghamshire then, if we want them to engage in the community. So just a question really, how it all connects up to creating a better service. Thank you.
Yeah, so, in terms of, we could get you details of the individual establishments that the CCG or NHS England commission care placements, NHS clinical placements from. If that would be of interest, I can get the CCGs to put that together to give an illustration of where the out-of-county provision is and how many of those placements are actually in county.
Thank you.
So you are right in terms of people being placed out of county, then it makes it more challenging in terms of family and friends keeping in touch with visiting, etc. And ideally, as much as possible, we want people to be placed near to home so that doesn't become such of a challenge. It is really, as I say, that balance of what we want to do is we want people to get better as soon as they possibly can, so that they don't have to be so unwell that they're in a mental health inpatient provision. We want to get people better so that they're able to leave and that they can be supported in the community. So of the original 28 sort of cohort of people that were in what we would have called the Winterbourne View cohort, there are just a handful of people who are still in inpatient provision, alternative provision now. Most people now are living in alternative community settings. So the 37 people are sort of more people who have been taken into secure accommodation and commissioned by NHS England, and the view is to step those down into other types of beds, really. It is quite a complex picture in terms of when you even look at mental health inpatient beds, there are so many different types of them. So people's journey might be stepping down from one bed to another before they're well enough to actually live out in the community. So but the overall joined up picture is that getting people well and supporting them to live in the communities that they want to live in, close to family. It isn't unfortunately, it isn't as simple as just saying we're going to build 37 specialist beds or 21 specialist beds in Lincolnshire to meet the needs of those service users, because the future needs of those service users might be different, and therefore we've got 37 beds in county, but we have to go out of county to buy beds that can meet those people's specialist needs. So with managing such those numbers, it is really, really challenging in terms of getting that right. All I can say is the ambition for the partnership is to get people well as soon as possible, that they can be supported in the local communities where they normally would live.
Thank you. If I could just come back, Chairman, but there will always be some. As you said, there's a calculation that we would expect to have 21, and we used to have 28 beds, and now we have none in county. So it's just something to consider for the long term. Thank you. I do take your point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So, well, if there's no further questions, we'll accept it as good. And if anybody's got any other comments or doesn't agree with it, then speak now, please. Okay, that's all good then. So, well, thank you very much for that, Justin. And as you say, it is complex, but seems like we're doing a good job to try and resolve. And I think the key thing is give as much support as we can to get these people back within our communities and out of these sort of special beds, etc. So.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, and I do think in terms of our joint working with the CCGs and LPFT, there is a real opportunity to do that by closer integrated working, but perhaps clinical organisations taking on a more proactive lead for commissioning the care for those people with the most complex needs, because the care can be better coordinated in that way, really. So that's what we're going to explore with the CCGs, and I'm happy to come and give an update back to the committee in terms of how those discussions progress at a point in the future, if that'd be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be welcome. I know when I went round, I mean, I'm no mental health expert, far from it, but I know when I did go round Discovery House, the one thing I often struggle, though, with myself is if somebody's not well, letting them sort of sit there on their own to come to terms with they're not particularly well, I struggle with myself, because my view is if you're active and doing something, it sort of generates a different line of thought. And I know, and as I say, I'm not the best person because I'm not an expert in this, but I sometimes when I was at Discovery House thinking, when that person's on their own, in here for quite a while, and I'm thinking I'd speed it up a bit more, but that doesn't mean to say I'm right or wrong. But I think sometimes giving somebody something to do, whether it's gardening or something, to refocus the mind is as good a cure as anything. But as I say, we're getting into a bit of dangerous territory, I feel. I'll leave that one with you anyway, Justin.
Thank you. Just in terms of the future and future items around mental health, as much as possible, what I'll try and do is bring colleagues who I work closely with within LPFT and the CCG, who, you know, probably have more of the clinical background that could sort of help to add to any questions of that nature, really, if that would be helpful. We'll try and do it more of a sort of joint presentation rather than it just being, you know, LCC feeding back.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, because I think that the problem actually often with mental health is actually getting a greater understanding of it, because it's the unseen disability, isn't it? So, and I think sometimes, like you say, we all could do with better education on the topic at times, but yeah, good idea. Excellent. Right, well, thank you very much for that. So I don't know if Derek's arrived yet or not. Don't think he has. So we'll go on to item 7, service level performance against corporate performance framework. And hopefully we've got Caroline Jackson here.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm here. Hopefully you can hear me.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully you've all had a chance to have a look. It's page 45 in your pack. So the report outlines performance compared to targets for Tier 2 service indicators for adult care and community wellbeing for quarters 1 and 2. So just to sort of explain, the reason the report covers the 2 quarters is because of the transition from the council business plan to the corporate plan and the introduction of a sort of Tier 2 performance framework. So that is the measures that you are seeing today that's coming to individual scrutiny committees. Also, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we did delay quarter 1 reporting. So that's the reasoning behind why this paper covers 2 quarters. But obviously from now on, we'll be back to quarterly reporting. So also to say that Appendix A, which is pages sort of 49 to 80, is the sort of graphical representation of each performance measure. And that has the additional information, including the definition, benchmarking data, all of the targets and full commentary against each of the performance measures. So just to kind of summarise, just to go back over quarter 1, so of the 16 measures that were reportable in quarter 1, 12 of them were either achieving or exceeding their target. 3 didn't achieve their target. 1 had improved but was still not achieving. And then as we moved into quarter 2, it was an improved picture with 14 out of the 16 measures either achieving or exceeding their target. And 2 that were not achieving their target. There are 2 measures that haven't been reported in quarters 1 and 2 around carers data. We're working closely with carers first. They've had some difficulties in providing the data to us. That has now been resolved and we will be able to report a full picture in quarter 3. So we'll report quarters 1, 2 and 3 for you. So if we have a look at quarter 2 and those that were exceeding their targets in quarter 2, yep, so those that were actually exceeding. So percentage of people aged 40 to 74 offered and received an NHS health check. I just wanted to say there is a data lag on this measure. So we do receive data in a delay. And obviously, again, one would anticipate that as we move forward and get more up-to-date data, that there's likelihood is that this performance will drop, given the implications of the pandemic and the ability for obviously NHS health checks to be both offered and taken up. But for the purposes of this reporting, it is still shown as exceeding the target. Similarly, permanent admissions to residential and nursing care homes for clients aged 65 plus continues to exceed in performance. Again, as we move forward, the impact of COVID may become more apparent. People in receipt of long-term support who have been reviewed, again, ahead of performance. We continue to be able to undertake those reviews, and that's due to in part teams reorganising themselves and how they process the work internally, so to improve the reporting on a more regular basis. So a positive picture there in terms of those that are exceeding. In terms of those that are not achieving their target in Q2, so that's two measures, adults aged 18 to 64 with a mental health problem living independently. So whilst the target's not been achieved, we are still reporting performance ahead of East Midlands and the SIPFA, which is a benchmarking group's similar performance for Q2 in 2018-19. They are low numbers in this cohort for this measure, so it does result in high kind of volatility in relation to the performance of the measure. I didn't know if Justin wanted to come in and comment on that at this point, or...
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I mean, as you say, I mean, when you look at the chart on page 66, which is SIPFA benchmarking data, Lincolnshire does perform well against the others in our group, and the current performance is significantly above what it was when we were benchmarking at that level, really. So I think overall, though, our ambition for promoting independence with this cohort of adults is very ambitious. We talked about transforming care previously around, moving away from institutions in terms of being able to support people. And again, we would prefer to support people with mental health needs in community settings rather than residential settings going forward. So a big part of our joint working with LPFT and the CCGs and our discussions around integrated working and joint commission is very much focused about pressing on with this, really. We would like to be a national leader in terms of these statistics. So it is a stretch target. And as Carolyn says, it will fluctuate, but actually, we have high ambitions on this agenda, so we want to push on with it.
Thank you, Justin. And the final measure that is not achieving its target is one we've discussed before, and again impacted by COVID in terms of the people supported to successfully quit smoking. Again, the opportunity to offer support to people during lockdown has been severely restricted. I have spoken to Robin Bellamy in Public Health, who has oversight of this area, and I know it's been discussed previously about looking at other local authorities who perform particularly well. And he proposes, and I think there may have been a discussion around bringing a paper back in the early part of 2021, looking at how the One U Lincolnshire contract is working, and also looking at other local authorities. I think Lancashire has been mentioned previously as doing particularly well in this area, but again, it's one that will be impacted in relation to that kind of support through COVID. So hopefully they're the key points. I can now hand over if there's any further questions.
Well, thank you for that. I think they've got quite a tough order, One U Lincolnshire, to deal with the whole cessation of smoking during COVID lockdown and all the issues that are going on, and the fact that they've struggled to get the sort of face-to-face meetings. And likewise, there's no doubt about it. A lot of the performance benchmarking has taken a hit in various directions, and it is, there is the valid excuse of COVID-19, unfortunately. Although I do think that the adults aged 16 to 64 living independently is something that actually, smoking is a choice. Living independently is a service that really can be, as you said, Justin, we need to sort of keep a focus on and drive that agenda myself. but I will open it up. So I've got Councillor Marianne Overton first off, and then Rob Kendrick.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to pick up on the one about the 18 to 64 with a mental health problem living independently. I'm not clear on, I think it says that this is our contract with LPFT, that they provide this service, and it's people who are receiving care or some support rather, who are receiving some support and are living independently. I don't think it says anything about people who are, we've managed to get a lot of homeless people off the street. Does it say anything about those people? I know a lot of those had mental health support needs, and I know I understand we have been working very hard to up our game significantly in that area. So does it say anything about those people? Does it say anything about those that are not able to access the support they need? Thank you.
You want to come back on that, Justin? Or?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the Caroline and I are having a look at this measure because it is a bit of a complex picture. I mean, in terms of the benchmarking data, it looks at people who are actually on the care programme approach, which is something that NHS England are ditching anyway, and there's a huge variance in trusts who support people on care programme approach. I think I read somewhere it varies from 3% to 78% of caseload across trusts. So, I mean, this, in terms of the CPA part of it, I think, we need to review this indicator in terms of the benchmarking stuff. I mean, in terms of access to the service that LPFT provides on our behalf as a local authority, it's effectively adult social care function. So, if people are eligible for adult social care and their primary support reason is their mental health and they're aged 18 to 64, then they'll get access to this service, and they'll have a key worker to support them with that. What we're aiming to do in terms of that overall cohort of adults who we support is that we want more of those to live independently and less people in residential accommodation. So I can assure you that, if people have eligible needs, their needs are being met. It's just the way that we meet those needs. We want to do it in more community-based settings rather than institutional settings, if that makes sense.
Sorry, Chairman, could I just come back? I see that this is not talking about the people I was thinking about, and the access to the service is not easy. If you talk to people in the street who've been trying to access it with long waiting lists, it's not easy in practice. So I'm sure they're there, and some people are managing it, but I do get complaints from people in my area, which I have taken forward with the service, and I hope that they've been dealt with appropriately. So it's just about, I see that, so a measure that includes that would be very useful. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, just to clarify though, what this is, there are a difference in terms of people being able to access secondary mental health services and service like IAP services, etc., which are commissioned by the clinical commissioning group and provided by LPFT and other providers. And then adult social care, which the council commissions from LPFT just for adult social care. So as far as I'm aware, there are no waiting lists for anyone to get access to adult social care in terms of Lincolnshire. Our performance is generally good in terms of that admission. There are, I understand, demand does outstrip supply for community mental health services, which are commissioned by the CCG, and part of our role is we do work closely with the CCGs to influence the development of community services and how money is invested. Certainly, what I would like to see is, that promoting independence, a disinvestment, because we don't necessarily need as many inpatient facilities and an investment in community services so we can keep people well and safe in those communities, really. So I absolutely acknowledge with you that, you know, there's a need to invest additional money nationally in mental health services. And, you know, we are working with the CZGs to influence how that money that's flowing down into local systems is invested. And we will, I think, in the new year be doing a presentation to the Scrutiny Committee in terms of some of the success that we've got in securing some of that funding and how it will be invested in our local communities. So I hope that will go a long way in terms of reassuring the committee in terms of, you know, that joint working.
Thank you.
All right, brilliant. Councillor Rob Kendrick and then Councillor Chris Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. I was interested in the one on smoking, and I can fully understand the reason why the target might not be hit on that one. I mean, smoking and substance use are always a very difficult ones because it comes down to motivation. I can appreciate that if people are not having face-to-face contact with counsellors, then I can see why their motivation might slip. So, you know, whilst I can't say I'm relaxed about it, I could fully understand the reason why that's taken place. And just coming back to what Justin was saying earlier, I was surprised about the change on CPA, where I seem to remember it was the best thing since sliced bread at one time. So now it's amazing how these things change. Thanks very much, Chairman.
Absolutely.
Right. Yes. Chris?
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, it's just a couple of quick ones. Firstly, on the safeguarding concerns that led to an inquiry, that's always one that quite interests me when this comes up. But so I see it was quite high during the first quarter and then dropped off a little bit during the second. Out of interest, do you have any sort of data about why that might be? I mean, is it because of everything going on at the moment? Was it that there was quite a lot more inquiries and people being perhaps a little more sort of I don't know, a little more cautious about things, you know, referring things that perhaps maybe in the past they wouldn't have done, or you know, is there anything sort of related to, you know, the pandemic and everything that might have had a reason, but you know, that might have caused that sort of 6% drop in, you know, in what then progressed on, and sort of the quality of the, you know, the things being referred on. So yeah, sorry, go on then, and I'll come to the second one after.
No, apologies for interrupting. If you want to continue, and then I'll come back on the points if you like.
Okay, yeah, it was just quickly on the smoking thing as well, where you said about it having moved a little bit more to not so much, you know, in-person support. I was just wondering whether there's any sort of indication whether that's something that actually might be worth taking forward, you know, after once things are back to normal a little bit, whether there is actually a bit of a place for something like that for those that have, you know, slightly busier schedules, and whether that might be an option for, you know, for people like that. So it was just whether, you know, there's a way of sort of making good of a bad situation on that sort of thing.
Okay, I mean, if I pick up the one on the safeguarding, and I think Derek's arrived and had his hand up, so he might be able to pick up the other question. I mean, in safeguarding, I mean, the big part, a big part of the reasoning behind that is that, you know, the people who raise safeguarding concerns are, you know, people in the community, people in the voluntary and community sector, as well as you know, people who work in the services, the staff themselves. So I mean, because people have been in lockdown, they're not out and about, so they're not seeing as much as they would do normally. So I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, there's not been so many referrals. But equally, a lot of people have been during lockdown decided to live with family and friends, so they're supported by, you know, people where normally they may be living more independently. So I think there's additional protective factors in there. And then I think as well, you know, there still is a fair proportion of stuff that is reported to us that doesn't meet Section 42 thresholds, and that we're, you know, it might be that, you know, residential homes and hospitals and home care services are that flat out with, you know, managing the other demands of the services that they probably aren't reporting some of the lower level quality stuff that they need to. I mean, what we did do a lot with the LRF and through safeguarding, though, is promote messages to key partners to say it was absolutely critical that people did continue to raise safeguarding concerns with us if people were at risk of harm, and we know that referral levels have returned back to historical levels now, and that hasn't actually changed very much during this second lockdown actually. So from a sort of, we are operating pretty much as a business as usual sort of standard now in terms of safeguarding, but they were probably the key reasons in terms of the first lockdown really.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I've got Derek's hand up, so welcome, Derek.
Thank you. Apologies for being late. I was on the Lincolnshire Outbreak Engagement Board and we overran because there's quite a lot to talk about. So just coming back on Councillor Reid's point, I think it's a really good point. I was on the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence Public Health Advisory Board, and one of the areas that we were looking at was whether remote text and video conferencing in things like stop smoking services worked and what the evidence was. The answer is there's not much evidence out there. So we actually put a bid in between the County Council and One New Lincolnshire and the University of Lincoln to the National Institute of Health Research, because One New Links needed to move online because of COVID, to rapidly evaluate it. Unfortunately, that was not successful, which was frustrating considering we haven't got the evidence. I think you're right, Councillor Reid. There's a question really about whether a blended approach going forwards is the right way to go. Some people really like to do stuff online. Some people really like to get a text message at certain points of the day. And there is some evidence that if you understand the pattern of when somebody is likely to want a cigarette, and often that's, after a morning coffee or after an evening meal, and you set up a text alert to give them some support, that can break the cycle. But the evidence isn't there. So we did try and get some, but unfortunately we've not got it. We're going back towards more of a blended approach now, and I think come next year, as Caroline I'm sure has covered, we will be looking and working with One New Lincolnshire about a blended approach so we maximise the impact within the resource that we've got.
Sounds good. Does buddying work all on that, Derek?
Sorry, Councillor Marfleet, didn't quite catch that last.
Does buddying work or peer mentoring? Just
really interesting evidence on this one. It does for some people, it doesn't for others, and there's a bit of a gender divide on this one. So some of the experience and some of the evidence is that if you offer a buddying solution, and it might be around smoking or it might be around something like physical activity or diet and nutrition, to a man, they will often say, can my wife, partner, significant other be part of it as well? If you offer it to a woman, they'll often say, can my best friend be part of it, rather than my significant other. So there is a distinction, and it's really a horses for courses sort of debate. Everybody's got their own preferences.
Right, excellent. Okay, well, is there any other further questions, or are we all happy to take it that it's okay? Right, okay. Well, on that then we'll move on to agenda item number 8, COVID-19 update. Derek, I believe you're going to give us the latest complicatedness of the whole situation, because there's one thing for sure, between all the different governments, they have created such a complicated thing. No one knows what tier anybody's in or talking about now. I think they've even Scotland comes into our tier system. It's just confusing.
I shall try my best to steer scrutiny through the current situation and what we're expecting over the next few days, and then obviously happy to come back and answer questions and come back again in the future. What I thought I'd do is break it up into 3 quick bits. One, about where we are in terms of the numbers and the data and what's happening in Lincolnshire at the moment. Secondly, talk a little bit about the COVID-19 winter plan that the government published earlier on in the week, which is actually a very useful document in my view, and definitely worth a read. And then thirdly, could touch a little bit, as you've already mentioned, Councillor Murphy, on the tiering models. I have no prior knowledge of what tier Lincolnshire will go in, or if indeed it will be Lincolnshire or a bigger or a smaller geography. So I can't answer any questions on that, but I can talk about what the plans are and then take questions and try and answer them. So the current position in terms of our data, as I'm sure you're all aware, is that from a relatively low level, what we saw in the run-up to the lockdown and then through the first 2-3 weeks of lockdown is an increase in our rates across Lincolnshire. The whole of Lincolnshire went up, but in particular East Lindsey, as I'm sure you're aware, went up significantly, and Boston probably second to East Lindsey, but quite a difference there. And that was resulted in some changes to what East Lindsey are doing, and we've had outbreak management conversations with both district councils to support and target. I'm really pleased that what we've seen over the past week or 10 days or so is a flattening out and now a reduction in the overall rates of infection across the whole of the county, including in Boston and East Lindsey. And the most up-to-date data, which we've just updated from our national line list data, is showing that the rate has dropped again in Lincolnshire, and the rate has dropped quite a bit in East Lindsey over a 7-day period. So we're down to around 240 per 100,000 population for Lincolnshire overall. The England rate is 230. So we're getting back towards the overall England rate across the county. And East Lindsey have dropped from what was about 420 in the 7 days up until the 23rd to 330 in the 7 days up to the 24th. So they are definitely coming down. Boston are less of a drop, but are lower overall anyway. And what we're seeing is that the rates in the over 60s, which is obviously a precursor to what the NHS is likely to have to support, is also coming down, with Boston and East Lindsey still having the highest rates. The rest of the county significantly lower than those two. So that's the current position in terms of the numbers. Our testing continues to be good. We are on average testing around 25,000 people in Lincolnshire every 7 days. And that has been the case for a number of weeks. So it's not that we're not testing enough people. So that's a positive. Shall I pause there in terms of numbers and try to, and if anybody's got any questions on the numbers, and then I'll come on to the COVID-19 winter plan.
Anyone got any comments? I think what's Cleethorpes, Grimsby and Scunthorpe, because in effect they've got high numbers, and obviously certainly my division borders all of those, and I think it's that transition of people in there coming back living in East Lindsey. Perhaps a contributor, I don't know, but
yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't got those data to hand, but I've got the overall pattern. And North East Lincolnshire and North Lincolnshire are both seeing a similar pattern. So they went up like that, and they're now coming down again. I haven't looked at their rates per 100,000 today because I've been focusing on the our district numbers, but they were certainly higher than our rates in North and North East Lincolnshire, and that we do think is part of the contributory factor to East Lindsey having higher rates because of, as you know, the travel to work routes, and of course the government have been saying that you can continue to travel for work. Interestingly, and a good segue into the COVID-19 winter plan, one of the key changes, I think, to the national policy in that COVID-19 winter plan is that no matter what tier, the very strong advice from government now is to work from home if you can in any way, shape or form. And that is a change, I think, from the policy we saw in the summer. And I think is some of the learning that we've experienced.
Yeah. Okay, I've got Marianne.
Thank you. On the point about different sizes of Lincolnshire, which parts might be in different tiers, are you making a case that we should have a local control in order to concentrate our efforts? That's the first question. Thank you.
The short answer is yes. I think every large upper tier authority is making the same point that over geography, especially the size of Lincolnshire, there is a very big variation. Those cases and representations have been made to central government. Obviously, it'll be a central government political decision as to what will happen, whether it will be upper tier authority or whether it will be below that. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm afraid, Councillor Overton.
Yeah, thank you. I've also been making that case, so that's good. Can I just ask on the testing? Is it you did talk about that? Is there plenty of capacity? Are we finding that people are not coming forward as much as they used to come forward for testing? How is that working? And with the mass testing, that might be in your next point. What have you got quite big ideas for what we're going to do in Lincolnshire? Thanks.
In terms of testing capacity using the existing testing model, absolutely, we've got plenty of capacity. As I said, over a 7-day period, roughly 25,000 people in Lincolnshire are being tested. And that's been the case for probably 6-8 weeks at least, from probably October right the way through. So plenty of capacity and plenty of people coming forward to be tested. That's really good. That is using the standard PCR test, so that's the gold standard test. What we can come on to is talk about the lateral flow testing and some of the other testing technologies that are coming forwards, if you like. We do. I have an ideal model, but I don't think we'll be in a position to deliver that ideal model for a number of reasons. But what we will be doing, I think the phrase mass testing now needs to be nuanced to say testing at scale in particular populations or particular risk areas. And that's what I certainly want to do with the support of councillors and LOEB. So, for example, at the moment, we'll be focusing on East Lindsey, obviously. We've put in a mobile testing unit, or we will be tomorrow. It will be in East Lindsey, in Skegness, to make sure we can deploy that testing capacity.
Okay, brilliant. I've got Rob Kendrick.
Thank you, Chairman. Derek, I was just wondering, looking at some figures here, which obviously are probably out of date now, but they're in today's press. For East Lindsey over 60s, cases per 100,000 was 617. What would it be now? Because obviously this may be out of date data. This seems to be one of the problems. There's obviously a time lag in data.
There is, absolutely, and what we do within the public health team and then share within the wider partners is calculate from the individual cases we see, and we get those data about 24 to 48 hours after the confirmed positive. So it's much more up to date. In answer to your question, in East Lindsey, the rate of positive cases per 100,000 over 60 or 60 and over has come down to below 400. I won't go to the specific because obviously it does change, but it's dropped significantly. We've seen that trend over the past week, and I'm hopeful, although obviously can't guarantee it, we will continue to see a downward trend in East Lindsey.
One further question, Chairman. Regards hospital bed occupancy, there's obviously been some concern raised about that. Has that shot up dramatically in Lincolnshire, or are we on a par with the rest of the country?
Now, I don't know whether we've got anybody on the call from the NHS, so I can give you the overall view, but clearly more of an NHS answer to give. We have seen a significant increase in hospital bed activity, as you would expect, given that we've seen an overall increase in our rates. That was acute probably 7 to 10 days ago. It's settled a little bit, but it's still very busy in the hospital sector. We continue to have the Green Site in Grantham, and that continues to have beds and carry out elective surgery, which is a really good news story because lots of other parts of the country haven't managed to keep that going. And we do have some bed capacity, but it does fluctuate, as you would expect, on a daily basis, and we work really closely with our hospitals to make sure that we can discharge people to keep that bed capacity. So it's busy. It's always busy at this time of year. So it's not different, but some of that is down to COVID, we know. I think the one thing I'd say in terms of NHS bed capacity and treatment is we've got a lot better treatments now than we had in the first wave. We have different therapies, we have better oxygen treatment therapies as well, and that's having a positive impact in terms of discharges, but sadly we do still continue to see deaths from COVID-19 in our county.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. So are we now going to go on the winter COVID plan then? Did you want to update us on that?
Yeah, I think Councillor Lawton maybe wanted to come in.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't quite sure how to turn on the speak thing here. Easily confused at my age. I would just, it's probably an unfair question, Derek, but just your views, your optimism or realistic view of where we are on a vaccine coming to our, coming over the hill, as the Prime Minister said, to rescue us. Whether we would have the ability to roll it out in the mass numbers required, or whether our systems are able to cope, or just if you could cheer us up and say, yes, it's going to be literally a lifesaver, or let's be a bit more realistic, it's going to take a considerably long time than we're all hoping. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it's absolutely, we have a number of vaccines that are coming through. We've been working really hard across Lincolnshire with our NHS colleagues, because the vaccine rollout is led through the NHS, to make sure we are ready for when the vaccine comes through. I absolutely think it will be one of the key tools in the toolbox, and I'll come on to that when I talk about the COVID-19 winter plan. There are challenges with some of the vaccines that aren't the case for other vaccines, and I'm sure Rebecca Nino, who's leading the vaccine programme overall for the county, would be happy to come in brief scrutiny whenever would work. But yeah, it is very positive news. It's been vaccines have been produced at a fantastic speed. They are, as far as I understand it, and there are different vaccines and they work different ways, but very effective. I would hope we will be ready, and I would hope we will start to roll out vaccination in December, but it will be relatively small numbers in December. So it will then crank up and increase, both in terms of the numbers of people that will be vaccinating and who we will be vaccinating, right the way through late December, January, February and into March. And I think come springtime, because of the rollout of a number of different vaccines, because of improving treatment and because of improving testing, coupled with spring actually helps, because people are out, you're in more open space, and the virus doesn't like UV light as well, so that will help. All of those things together will mean spring will feel very different to where we are now. But we've got a challenging few months ahead, and we've just got to all, lean into it, put our shoulders to the wheel and push us up this hill, and I'm sure we will.
Thank you. That's very reassuring. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I think in some sense, the way I look at a lot of this is I don't think we'll see normality back towards even the summertime. I think the rollout programme will take time, and there is a lot to do. You've got the vulnerable first, never mind all the healthy people. But just on the health thing, there's some people I know that have all been involved with and had COVID, and I happened to say to them, how was all the recovery? He says, well, it's quite simple. If you're actually quite fit and healthy, you will get over it quicker. So that sort of leads us back to the sort of One New Lincolnshire and their whole sort of weight and health programme. Are we seeing an uptake in that? Because it really, we've got such a great opportunity from a public health here of driving the health agenda, because actually it really is so crucial to be healthy right now. And is that sort of still, have we got a good uptake on that? Or is that sort of, are we struggling?
There's no question from the evidence that we've got so far, and bear in mind the evidence is developing. This is a virus that didn't exist in humans this time last year. So we've got to recognise that whatever we learn at the moment will be subject to change. But there's no question that if you are a smoker and you catch COVID, you are going to have a worse prognosis than if you are a non-smoker, or even if you've quit recently. There seems to be evidence that even if you've quit recently, it will help your recovery from COVID-19. So you're absolutely right, Councillor Marfleet. The more we can do to push people through, support them to get the support from One New Links in terms of stopping smoking them, the better. And any smoker in Lincolnshire has open access to One New Lincolnshire. All you've got to go onto the website. All you've got to do is go onto the website, and you can get a tailored package of dedicated support to help you quit. So for anybody watching online or afterwards, just Google One New Lincolnshire. And if you put in that you're a smoker, you will get that support. As we talked about with the previous item, and apologies for coming in towards the end, the package and the delivery mechanism has had to change for obvious reasons, but you'll still get your nicotine replacement therapy or other pharmacotherapy delivered to you, so you still get the full rounded package, just done in a different way.
And that includes weight management as well, doesn't it?
Well, weight management, there is an open offer to everybody in Lincolnshire about online support and tools that people can use themselves. The more enhanced weight management physical activity programme is dedicated to people who are in the higher risk groups, or are waiting for elective surgery, for example, because, as you know, the NHS have part funded the programme. So it depends on the support for everybody in Lincolnshire around that through One New Lincolnshire, but the more targeted, dedicated package support is only targeted at certain groups of the population. But again, anybody who's interested, go onto the One New Lincolnshire website. You can put in your details and it will tell you the support that's available to you.
Okay, I'll let you just talk about the COVID winter plan then.
So I'll be quite brief on this, because I would suggest that if members of scrutiny have the time and the inclination, it's a good document. It's worth reading through. There are three key objectives with the COVID-19 winter plan. Number one, bring R below 1 and keep it there. And we can talk again about what R is if people would find that useful. The second is find new and better ways to manage the virus, which is really important. And the third is to minimise the damage of the virus on people, on the economy, and on the country as a whole. So they're the three key objectives. And there's three ways that we're going to do that. One is about vaccine development, as Councillor Lawton was asking about, and I am cautiously optimistic, and certainly I think science will come to our rescue, as it did with a whole range of different diseases, smallpox being the obvious example where we actually eradicated it. So the vaccines will be really, really important. Really positive news. We're still waiting for MHRA approval, because as well as the vaccine being shown to work in studies, we've got to make sure it's absolutely safe, and that's the role of the MHRA. But all of the evidence I've read about the vaccines is they are very safe, and we will roll them out in a careful and controlled way. The second way that we tackle it is through improved treatments, and I've mentioned that already. And the third way is by testing either using our our regional testing site that's in the showground, and we're trying to increase our capacity. Testing with our mobile testing units, and we'll be putting our mobile testing unit back into Skegness tomorrow to help identify people who've got the disease in East Lindsey and bring their rates down. And then testing using some of the new technologies like lateral flow testing devices, which I'm happy to talk about. So they're the three ways that we will tackle it. And all of this will be wrapped within the tier model that obviously lots and lots of discussion about. And happy to touch on that a little bit. And we will have medium, high and very high. I have no prior knowledge of where Lincolnshire will be. I don't know whether it will be a Lincolnshire level, it will be an East Midlands level, or it might be a district council level. We should find out tomorrow. As I understand it, that conversation will be had. But until that happens, I can't really second guess where we'll be. But the winter plan describes what the impact of those different tiers are. I'll pause there because, with your permission, Chair, I have to dial off at 12:30 because I've got to go into the National Chief Medical Officer call for Directors of Public Health. So I've got 15 minutes to try and answer questions.
Right, we'll make a start. I think from my point of view is the communication message needs to be simple, it needs to be clear, and actually it just wants a message behind it which explains to people why, because that is the one thing is that, you know, it just seems such a sort of mess of a communication in some sense that, and then people don't relate to it, don't understand it, and then the whole thing starts to sort of, oh well, can't be bothered. And I think that really is my sort of take up on it, really. And I think we as Lincolnshire need to just have it sweet and simple, and you know, really just enforce it.
I agree, Councillor Marsley. We have. I apologise to anybody who hears me on the radio or sees me on the television. I've never done as much media as I've done over the past 10, 12 months, and it's something that I don't like doing. Trust me, I would much rather be sitting quietly in an office with spreadsheets and working with my team behind the scenes, but it does change really quickly. I think part of that is that this is, I say it all the time, it's a virus that didn't exist in humans a year ago. So as we learn, we have to change our strategy. We have to adapt as we go. And that does need a lot of comms, and we try to do that. But you're absolutely right. It's hard to try to distill it down into key messages. But for me, the key messages are: make sure you're washing your hands for 20 seconds. Make sure you're covering your face when you're in an enclosed space, or even if you're walking down a busy street. If you feel more comfortable covering your face, and please make sure you keep your 2 meters, because if you keep your 2 meters from everybody outside of your family bubble, you are really minimising your risk, especially if you keep washing your hands properly.
Yeah. Okay, I've got Christine.
Thank you very much, Derek. Very simple question, yes or no answer, really. Is Christmas worth the risk?
From my perspective as a public health practitioner, I think the more we do to minimise risk, the better. However, it's not just my view, and exactly, there's always pros and cons. I think, and this is something that I say quite a lot in media, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. So we will see how this plays out. Obviously, the 3 household bubble has been announced by the government. I think everybody needs to pay, and the Prime Minister said this himself, everybody needs to consider their own situation in this context. If you're in a vulnerable group or a clinically extremely vulnerable group, then you need to really think carefully about what you want to do. And if you are going to meet up with somebody else, my advice would be, you know, get wrapped up warm and do it outside. You know, there is no such thing as bad weather, there's just bad clothing, as the Scandinavians would say. So let's get wrapped up, let's enjoy the beautiful countryside that we've got and the coast in Lincolnshire. And if you are going to meet other households, keep your 2 meters, do it outside, and you're minimising your risk.
Well, I was hoping you might almost get me out of a hole and I could say to my children, Oh, I'm awfully sorry. Derek Ward says it's not a good idea, and I'll stay home with a bottle of champagne and a big box of chocolates and just relax with a good book.
Well, Councillor Lawton, I can't give you one side of the public health advice and then let you stay at home with a bottle of champagne and a big box of chocolates.
Rats. Thank you very much. Thank you.
There's a high percentage of people that have been hankering for a lockdown to diffuse all the family issues. Okay, I've got Marianne, I think, then Rob, and then Liz.
Thank you very much. I just wonder how much research has been done on exactly how it has been spreading in Lincolnshire. I entirely agree with you about the three basic rules, and I've certainly been telling all my residents that it's comforting, I think, that we can keep ourselves safe, by using those three rules. But I just wonder, I know we talked about some companies where food processing units, we had that, but it seems, I did just have a look at the figures and we certainly have shot up. Could it be children coming out of school and then running straight onto the playgrounds? Are there areas that perhaps we've not properly encouraged people to think about? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Overton. I'll take the schools bit first. My professional view, and I say this to everybody, is that we should absolutely keep our schools open. All of the evidence that we have, and in 5 years' time, this may have changed, but all of the evidence we have today, and it's really good research, suggests that children, young people, and in fact teachers and staff who catch COVID, who are at school, tend to do it outside of the school setting. Now, not everybody, clearly, there will always be some difference, but generally people are catching it outside of the school setting. And whilst I know a lot of people say, well, look at the number of schools that are affected, we have 370, 380 educational establishments across Lincolnshire, and I think we're up to 110 maybe schools have been affected. But that being affected could be you've had one case.
One teacher.
And obviously some of our big secondary schools have hundreds, if not thousands of students. So to close all of that because of one or two cases, to me, seems absolutely the wrong thing to do, especially when you consider the impact, the negative impact on, firstly, children's education, secondly, their emotional support that they get from their friends. I've got 2 school-age children, albeit one's a sixth form now, and it's just massively different. And I think whilst we haven't got fantastic research, because it's very hard to do a randomised controlled trial in this sort of model, what we can do is compare wave 1, when schools were closed, with wave 2. Now, if you look just on the face, you see that we've got far more cases now in wave 2, but we're testing in the community now. We weren't doing that for most of wave 1. We were only testing in hospitals. So if you compare the hospital testing in wave 1 with now, then you are more comparing like with like. So I do not believe that schools should close. I think the educational benefits and the emotional benefits for children and young people is far more important. So that's my soapbox in terms of schools.
The speakers off.
Sorry, thank you. It was people, I don't know, because I have checked the schools. I've been into my local school and I am very confident that they are running in an extremely safe way and they're doing everything brilliantly. And I saw that firsthand. I'm very confident in that. What some parents have raised with me is that they see the children playing afterwards. Thank you.
I'm going to say we need to be quick because we've got Rob and Liz and Derek's got to be gone in 7 minutes.
Sorry, that's it.
Okay. Right, Rob.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wanted to ask a question, and perhaps Derek might not be able to give an opinion on this, but picking up on your point, Chairman, about sort of communication and confidence in what comes out. I've noticed a big contrast between the sort of predictions, the modelling, and the actual empirical evidence at the end of the day. And recently we had, I think just before the current lockdown, projections of 4,000 deaths a day or something like that. I may have got it wrong. And I don't know whether that dents people's confidence in what they're hearing. That, consistently through this, we've had these projections from Messrs. Whitty and Vallance. And in most cases, it doesn't seem to match up happily match up with what actually happens. I know some people might argue that's because the precautions have been taken and that's why they haven't reached these projections, but I'm not quite clear on it. Thank you, Chairman.
Shall I just, I'll give a little bit of context on that. I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Kendrick, that what Chris Whitty has been saying in terms of the projections are what's called reasonable worst case scenarios. And that is the standard approach that government asks us to take as professionals so that they understand what would be the worst case. And then obviously that gives you a context politically and from a policy perspective to act. And what we saw with the first lockdown and with this lockdown is by acting, you make sure you don't experience that worst case. And that's what's happened. But I absolutely agree with you. It's quite hard to communicate that. I think that the key message would be that any projection, all models are wrong, just some of them are helpful. And they give us an idea of the direction of travel. And I have no doubt whatsoever that if we hadn't had lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, at the moment nationally, I think we're nearly up to 56,000 deaths from COVID. We would be in a massively worse scenario than that had we not had lockdown 1 and 2. I'm not going to try and second guess where we'd be, but massive differences.
Okay, thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Derek. Mine isn't a question, but I want to thank you and Tony for your regular appearances on BBC Radio Lincolnshire. Almost every morning you're on there, and there's no lions for you, as there must be. Yeah, you're doing a wonderful job. I did write to you both several months ago by email to thank you for all you're doing, but I wanted to do so today in this public forum. You were praised the other day by a resident from South Holland as being the voice of informed reason. And I thought that was really, really good. And I think your broadcast has made both you and LCC, your role in public health, so much more open and relevant to the whole county. And I think it's really, what you're doing is wonderful. I want to thank you most sincerely. I listen to you almost every day. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Snick. Really, really kind. And I did pass it on to Tony. And, I'm only as good as the team behind me. And I think I've got probably the best team in the country. And it's an absolute privilege to be the mouthpiece.
The poster boy. Yeah, but you're doing
what to say, and then I can run and say it. So
you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
I think in some sense, Liz, it highlights that sort of local knowledge. We have a sort of greater understanding, Derek and the team, about how the communities work. And the one thing I sort of see when I look at the London lot all talking is I really think that they've actually got so far removed from how the population operates that that's why we're getting some of these sort of issues go on. Our communities are leaping about all over the place and are far more sort of going round to each other's houses than what anyone ever thought. And the way we work and the way we travel and the way we do planning and build houses is all sort of, it's the big picture, isn't it? Everybody's driving everywhere now, and where you live is nothing to do with work. But no, you've done a sterling job, Derek, and and I think you do stand by it. You keep repeating the very three key messages, and I think the public health and adults and LCC have done a sterling job.
I do.
I'd add that certainly children's and schools, I know we've talked about it, schools have done a phenomenal job, and care homes equally, including domiciliary care workers have done a fantastic job of keeping both our children and young people in school and safe. and our older adults looked after and as safe as they can be. So I think it's been a real Team Lincolnshire effort right the way across the system, and I just want to add my thanks to everybody in that. If you wouldn't mind, I'll dial off now. Happy to come back again at the next scrutiny if that would be useful and give an update then.
No, that's very good, and thank you very much. Brilliant.
There you go.
Right. Okay, I'll move on to item 9, Simon, the work programme.
Yes. Hello, Chairman, hello, Committee. Just take you to pages 82 and 83 of the agenda pack, the items listed for January and February. We are anticipating one new Lincolnshire item, perhaps for the February agenda, and we will be discussing, Chairman, we will be having an agenda planning meeting in the next few weeks to discuss perhaps managing these items, because the list, certainly for February, is already getting quite long. I'll take any questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it is, but then some of those are perhaps key items that need to be on there, but we'll have a look. Is there anything, and I'm quite mindful for the committee that really we only really have January and in effect February where we can really discuss anything. So if there is anything that you feel that you want to either have an update over the last 4 years that you think, you know what, I'd just like to know where that is or what that is, then please email myself and Simon and Liz, and you know, because we are coming to the end of our term, and we haven't, you know, 2 more committees. We've got one final one in April, which could be the updating one, but if there is anything, please, you know, and you think about it, drop us an email that you might just want picking up or highlighting to for us to sort of highlight for the next committee. Any comments, or are we all happy with all of that? So, okay.
Happy.
That will therefore conclude the meeting, and thank you all for coming.
Hope some of us are vaccinated.